Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I am watching my tech and I'm just trying to figure out why it's a little delayed. I think I'm good. But then I think I'm freezing here. It's funny, it's a new year and the tech seems to always kind of have these little hiccups. So let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Glad to see people from YouTube and LinkedIn on here. Allie over there on YouTube, let me know if you can hear me and the video and all that stuff is working just as we go. For me, when I'm looking, I see this start and stop and I can't figure out why that's happening. But I'll watch for the chat for 1 second and then I'm going to get rocking and rolling. We should be looking at this. It's funny. I think it's all starting and stopping. And the big problem is I can't really start and stop. Let me just do this and come back. Am I there? Am I not there? Trying to see this thing. Everything, Tracy, if everything's good, then I'm gonna get rocking and rolling. For me, my images are locked, but I just won't even pay attention to that for now. I'll just hope it all kind of comes out okay. Hey, I want to start off with first off, Happy New Year. Today is literally New Year's Day, right? It's January 1st, 2025. I'm excited for the new year. I'm excited for the day. And I like being here. People ask me, it's like, why are you here on a holiday? Well, first off, I'm an entrepreneur just like you. And the idea is nowadays, to me, what entrepreneurism means in particular is that we kind of work 7 days a week and we take off when we want to take off. That's convenient. That's one of the biggest advantages. And so like right now, my kids are playing with their Christmas presents. And in fact, it's education or something. So it's a 30-minute session for me to come over here. And actually, it's really rewarding for me to come on here and engage with you and to be able to share tips with you and give people a chance to meet each other. The tip I wanted to give you for showing up early and on time is just if you're not creating content, like I create a lot of content, but if you're not even creating any content that is consistently getting you out there and kind of visible, making people aware of who you are, then engage on social media, right? Yeah, the video is glitchy to me too. I'm not quite sure what I can do with that, Tracy. So hopefully you just kind of put me in a corner for a second. I'll talk to the slides and I'll show you when I got some good slides. I might actually pause me and just show only the slides. But the idea of engagement on LinkedIn is you could go in and comment, and every single day, I think I put that down as like a resolution example. I'm going to engage 3 times or 5 times a day. It's like somebody might make that as a New Year's resolution. When you do that, you start getting high visibility. And so consider that as an alternative to content. If creating content on a regular basis seems a little overwhelming or you just don't have the time, you certainly can find 15 minutes a day to just engage on LinkedIn so that other people can see you. So, okay, let's dive into today's training. Again, I'm really excited to have all of you here today. We got a good crowd for a New Year's Day where a lot of people might still be recovering from last night. But I wanted to talk about New Year's resolutions because new resolutions are often made and then abandoned, right? Sometimes we're like, oh, we're going to get in shape, or we're going to do these kind of things, which is ironic or coincidental to what I'm going to talk about at the end of this training about what my resolution is. But sometimes I think we make resolutions that are so overwhelming that we're setting ourselves up for failure right out of the gate. And for me, I've always liked a resolution that was around very minimal effort on my part that would lead to success. And we're going to talk about that. But I like to make resolutions that are so easy to keep, but they're going to be life-changing. And in my resolution this year, I'll talk more about it, but it is around health. But what I'm saying I will do is actually going to be very easy for me, but it'll be very transformational for my life. So I'm really excited about that. And I want you to think about this as well. We don't want to, my opinion, my recommendation is not to make resolutions that are like goals. I'm going to get my MBA in the next year or something, or some things like that. But I want you to make great leaps forward in your personal life or in your professional life or in your company, right? If you're looking at a resolution just more broadly for your company, think about it as great leaps forward as you move forward. And when you do that, you're really going to have the ability to get traction. So I think we got a good enough people who are here seeing me at the moment. I'm going to turn off my video and just stick to slides because the video doesn't seem to be working. And I'd rather you sit there and see a good set of slides. And so let's go ahead and head on into this. Where am I going here? I lost my whole control. There it is. It's New Year's Day, but I'll just go back as if I'm brand new to the whole process. It is interesting. Like I'm using a different way of kind of engaging on here, and I apologize. I can't seem to see how to advance slides, which is just the silliest thing around. There we go. I don't know if this is going to work. I'll watch for a second, but we're going to be talking about, I don't know why I left it as how to win federal contracts. I apologize for that. Getting rusty because I took 2 weeks off. But we're going to be talking about resolutions, right? And in the resolutions that I want to talk about, I'm going to cover down on how to set your resolution in 3 main ways of looking at a resolution. Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And habit 3 is first things first, right? Put first things first. And so I'm going to talk about thinking his way of looking at resolutions from a big rocks perspective. The second path that I want to talk about today towards a resolution is thinking about this. There's a book out there called The One Thing. And it's this idea of what's the most important thing you can be working on. And I want to talk about that. And then the third way is to look at, if you think about SMART goals, especially we used to say that, well, I want to just morph that a little bit or borrow from SMART goals and say SMART resolutions. How do you create SMART resolutions? And SMART resolutions are these ones that really, when you define it in the right way or in the smart way, you're going to achieve the results that you want. And then I'm going to wrap up with talking about my own resolution for 2025, just as, for those of you who are interested in knowing. If you don't know who I am, welcome to joining me on a New Year's Day, even though you don't know who I am. But I am Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, co-founder of GovCon in a Box. And I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. That's what I want for you. And that's what we're going to cover down in all the trainings that I do. Today, it's going to be around predictable results from your New Year's resolution. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our Government Contracting Success newsletter. A lot of good information in there for you. Every single week, we're trying to put out a lot of good tips or information on the federal market, how to succeed. So let's start with Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. He wrote these powerful lessons of personal change that I started reading back in 1997, frankly. When I was in the Army, I was working in the Pentagon for the Secretary of the Army, and this book came out and hit it. All the senior officer leaders were like latching onto it, making everybody read it. And I was enlisted, actually. So for me, they weren't forcing it on me, but I was smart enough to watch what they were doing and mimic it. And I started reading this book. And in Stephen Covey's book, he has habit 3, put first things first. And the way he describes this, I hope put first things first makes sense, but the way he describes how do you define what first things are, it's this way of looking at rocks. And he uses this example with this jar that you see on the slide if you're looking at it. But he's got this big jar, and he says, imagine all the things you have to do in your life, all the things that are in your life, important in your life, are represented by big rocks, gravel or little rocks or sand, right? And sand. And the idea is the big rocks are representing the highest priority projects and tasks that are important to you. An example for me is my family. It is a big rock that often in my life sits at the side of the jar instead of being in the jar. And you'll see in a minute where I'm trying to prioritize my family going into 2025. So that, because it's just something that's important to me, and I got 11-year-olds. So that's important. So there's big rocks. You decide what those big rocks are to you. And one of the ways that he describes, or it gives you kind of a framework or a matrix to understand the difference between big rocks, little rocks, and sand, is big rocks are these things that are important to you, but they're not urgent. They're never screaming for your attention. They're not the squeaky wheel, but they are very important to you. And then little rocks are these ones that are urgent and important. So think customer calling you. That's an example of something that's important and urgent on a regular basis, right? And then sand is all this unimportant stuff that is either urgent or not urgent. So not urgent, but and also not important. It could be TV. So if I'm binging Netflix, then that's not important and it's not urgent. And that's sand. It doesn't mean it doesn't go into my jar and I don't do that in my life, but that's not the big rock in my life. That's not an important thing. And one of the things that are not important and urgent, those are things like emails coming in all the time. Or if you go to search for one important thing on YouTube and then you go down a rabbit hole and you're watching all this stuff that's not, you've slid from maybe important down to not important. And so what Stephen Covey says is that if you don't put the big rocks in first into this jar, right, or into your life, into my 2025 planning, if I don't put my big rocks in first, then they're not going to fit in later because the sand will fill up all the space. And then I'm putting in these reactionary or little rocks or what I call gravel in next. And then there's almost no room at all for the big rocks. They just can't fit in. And what Stephen shows, I'm sorry I don't have a video, but you can watch this on YouTube. But he shows that if you take the big rocks, if we just think about rocks for a second, and then we'll come back to goals and priorities. If you take these big rocks and put them in first, they go in wherever they're in the jar in the bottom, and they come up even, let's say, halfway up the jar. And then if you pour in the gravel, these little rocks, they filter all in between those big rocks. And they're able to get down to the bottom. And then the last thing you pour in is sand. And as you pour the sand in, it's so small and unimportant that it just finds its way in all the little crooks and crannies between big rocks and little rocks. And by doing this, you now have made sure that your big rocks are in your life, or you're working on them. And so 2025, I want you to think that same way, right? Forget about little rocks and sand, because those things will never go away and they'll always make themselves known. But what are your big rocks for 2025? An example for me as a big rock is I'm starting a company called Nancy Co. And the whole reason I want to start it is so that I can prove out that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process, right? It's what I say all the time. And I ran 2 different government contracting businesses for 20 years, but I haven't run one since 2018 when I sold my company in 2017. And so I want to start another one just to demonstrate 0 to $1 million in 12 months. That's a big rock to me, and I'm putting that in the jar. I told you already, I got things like my family, my health. These are things that are really important to me going into 2025. And so think about yours. What are your big rocks that are out there? By the way, I wasn't looking at chat, but I am kind of looking over. I'm so busy talking, I don't get too engaged in the chat. But I do want to say Happy New Year to those of you showing up. I'm off camera because my camera was glitchy, but my slides look good since they're pretty static. Okay, so I talked about Stephen Covey's way of looking at prioritizing the things that are in your life from his 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Habit 3 was put first things first. With Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, they wrote this book called The One Thing. And it's not one of those books that I read every year because, frankly, the minute I read it, I got the message. Where Stephen Covey's book is about these habits and you're just reinforcing it. So I read that book every single year. But The One Thing, it is such an easy, clear message to understand. And it all comes down to this question that they ask. And you can think of this kind of like, what is the biggest of the big rock that's out there, right? What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary, right? That's what the main question in this book, The One Thing, is. They're saying, what's the one thing you're working on today, this quarter, this year? For today's thing, we're talking about the New Year's resolution. So what's the one thing you can do this year that if you do it, it will make everything else in your year easier or even unnecessary? And this is a really great way of looking at that because I live and breathe with that. I have it printed sitting on my wall behind my computer. So when I'm looking at the camera, that message sits back there going, even this morning, right? When I look at my morning, I'm like, what's the one thing I can do that if I do it today, it's going to make everything else easier or unnecessary? And there's certain things that I can do and look at it. And they don't have to be these spectacular things. And the farther out you go, the more spectacular that one thing should be. So an example is, what's one thing that I could do that such by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary. So one example is I'm really trying to continue to drive home this idea that government contracting is not a secret, it's a process. And I teach this all the time. But the one thing I think I can do that will make it so much easier, and it will eliminate a lot of questions that I deal with. So it'll eliminate a lot of activity I have to deal with, is where I don't just teach people how to have success in government contracting like I've had in the past, but I spend a year saying, come with me 1 hour a day. I am going to work on this Nancy Co business and I'm going to show people. I really believe that if I do that one thing, it'll make everything else easier, because along the journey, I can say, hey, now I'm doing some marketing assets. And I'm like, okay, well, let me demonstrate how I do marketing assets. My team and I can then take that and put it together to be able to serve out somewhere else. It's just making everything else easier. For me, you'll see in a minute, health is a really big one for me in 2025. But in just in case anybody's curious, health is a big, important thing to me, because I don't want to be one of those people who has to get into health because the doctor told you, or some situation. I got no situation, I got a little bit of a chin and I'm like, yeah, I should get rid of that or something. More importantly, my kids are 11. I want to be able to sit there and make them feel like I'm super powerful for at least a few more years before they start picking me up and holding me down and things like that. But anyway, so that's why I'm going that direction. The one other thing that Gary and Jay talk about in their book is this idea that if you look at a goal and you say, what's the one thing I can do right now? That they tried to show this concept, and they talk about it in the book, and it is such an amazing thing. I actually listened to it, so it's even more exciting, where they talk about if you took a domino and you use that small domino, let's say the size of your pinky or your finger, and you use that domino and it fell over, well, it can knock a domino down that's basically about 50% bigger. And so each time you're having a domino knock down the next bigger domino, what they describe, and they're showing this picture, but there's another one where they show by the time you get to 50 dominoes, the domino will be the size of the Earth to the moon. Like, that's how big it is. And so, and what they're trying to say is you can do something that seems so little that in just 10 or 20 steps down the road, if you will, it will have such a massive impact. I'll give you one quick example. I started doing this training and everything I do since 2018. But in 2022, I think it was, I started doing, in March 2022, I started doing these LinkedIn Live videos pretty much every day at 12 Eastern. And in the beginning, it was like 5 people there or something. And I think those 5 people were accidentally there. But there was like 5 people there. But now you go 2 years forward, I have such a large audience that I have federal agencies coming to me saying, can we work with you to reach your audience? I'm still trying to decide how much I want to do with that. But that's the impact, right? That's the impact I had, is that first I wanted to reach industry, you and small businesses, to teach you the process. And what I really have been trying to do is to get the government to communicate just as well out to industry. Well, so now I have that impact, and it's something else that you can have. And you don't have to do what I do, but just think about in your own life when you're setting a goal, what is that one thing that if you do it, it's going to make everything else easier or unnecessary in your day, or in your year, excuse me, because we're talking about New Year resolution. All right, so the last way I want to talk about looking at this, we looked at it from big rocks. What are your big rocks? Going into 2025, what are the most important things? The second way of looking at it is, what's the one thing that if you did it would make everything else easier or unnecessary? And so this third way of looking at it is a little bit more tactical, is creating SMART resolutions. And the idea of SMART resolutions, it's an acronym around these 5 words, right? You want your resolution to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And so let me walk through what those mean there. So I'm going to use an example that I put on a LinkedIn post this morning. And the example that I had was, I want to increase my engagement, my visibility, right? And I would give this goal to one of my customers because I don't actually need it. But they say, hey, I want to have more visibility, more people aware of who I am. And so what I'm setting the resolution as, a very easy resolution for 2025, is I am going to comment on 5 posts a day every day in 2025. And by the way, when I say every day, I mean every day. It takes, I mean, unless you celebrate a holy day that is so holy that you don't do anything else like watch Netflix, then you do this. But if you, I come from a Catholic background. I grew up going to church. We did our thing, and then boom, we were watching football. It's like, okay, Sunday wasn't totally all dedicated. So if I'm watching football, I could spend 15 minutes to engage in 5 posts on LinkedIn. Point is, that's a very specific goal. It's specific because it says 5 posts. It's measurable because I can measure it every day. Did I do 5 posts a day? Did I do 25 or 35 posts this week, this month? Am I on track? Like, I'm looking at that. That's a measurable thing. So every single day and week I can measure it. Is it achievable? Right? And this, I used to call this realistic as well, but is it achievable? Can I really comment on 5 posts a day? Sure, I can. Like, I could literally go in and go, hey, Jay Madigan, great post. It's like, that's a kind of half-baked comment. I'm not really adding any value to Jay Madigan's content. But as I get better through the year, I might say, hey, great, Jay, great post. I like bullet 3 when you said this or something, right? And so I can get better, but it's achievable because how hard is it to write a couple of words into somebody's post in the comment? Hey, Neil, thanks for posting. That's like the basics, and it's not a quality post, but I didn't say quality yet. I just said I'm going to come and post comment every single day. Relevant. So is it relevant to me and what I'm trying to do? And so if you think about somebody's out there and they're trying to get in, build awareness in industry with federal agencies, then the posts I would be going and commenting on are like, oh, hey, look, the Navy put out a post, the Army put out a post, or this small business specialist put out this post. Jay Madigan put out this post. Neil put out this post. Samuel Brown put out this post, right? I can go in there, and when I'm commenting on their posts, well, they're all, the agencies, the industries, and people like you and me, we're all relevant to the government contracting world we want to be in. So this resolution is relevant to what I want to achieve. And Tracy's got a great chat comment in there. If you look at it, it's, this goal that I just set, 5 a day, you could do that literally in line while you're waiting for the groceries to go forward or something, right? And then the last one is it time bound? And time bound is a really important thing. First off, time bound tends to apply to a goal like, hey, in 3 months or 6 months, we're going to do this. But if you think about a resolution being time bound, it's time bound in 2 ways to me. And the most important one is the first way. The first way it's time bound is I'm saying I'm going to do 5 comments. That basically is 15 minutes a day. I literally could do it in 5 minutes a day, right? If I didn't want to put great comments, but if I want to put really good comments, it would take me 15 minutes a day, 2 or 3 minutes per comment, right? And so it's time bound. It's very easy for me to do. And then it's also time bound in the sense that I'm committed throughout the year, 365 days. And think about 5 comments times 365. I don't know what that is, but it's almost 2,000 or more than 2,000 comments. If my goal was to increase my visibility among my market, then that's going to do it, right? And the quality is a secondary tactic. But so when you think about your own goals, make sure that they're smart resolutions out there. Excuse me. When you think about your resolutions, make sure they're smart resolutions. They're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. I wanted to share with you just my 2025 New Year's resolution. And if you wonder how long it took me to come up with my resolution, it literally was less than a minute. And the reason it took literally less than a minute is because I came up with this while I was talking to my 11-year-old son, Alex, who was saying he liked this music I was listening to, but he goes, you know what I really like is this other music. It's like a different kind of dancing music because we're dancing to one type of thing or something. But when he was able to describe it, and then he pulls up this YouTube video and shows me where he saw it. I was like, oh, I know what that is. And I pull it up, and it's swing dancing. And I grew up dancing. And then Nancy and I, when we got married and when we're dating, we're swing dancing all the time. And here it is. My son's always moved around because they're my kids, right? Nancy's. But I looked at this and I said, oh my God, first off, swing dancing, if you're not familiar with like real fast triple swing, things like that, you get out of breath in 5-10 minutes. Well, I talk all the time. Every single day I talk. And I don't know if you know this, but the longer you can hold the longer between each breath, the long. It's funny. I'm having a little brain fart as I'm describing how you can avoid that. But the longer you can hold your breath, basically, and just talk, because you're not breathing when you talk. The longer you can hold your breath, or before you need another breath, the bigger your ideas and your thoughts can come out. And so when I'm training every single day, I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm building up my lung capacity, right? Cardio. I'm able to do this. And by the way, I learned that tip in Toastmasters. This is where you get all sorts of valuable guidance in there. But sidebar. So one thing is I was dancing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally out of shape. I'm totally out of shape. I'm winded from just not doing enough of this dancing, right? And I felt it immediately. I'm like, well, if I keep doing that, I'll get in shape really fast again, like cardio shape, getting back. And then the second thing was how much fun Alex and I were having. And so my other son is Gabe, and I'm like, okay, 3 of us are gonna be doing this. So we're moving, we're exercising. And with them, I could just enforce that role. With Nancy, it's more of an opt-in, opt-out kind of thing. But I looked at that and I said, my resolution for 2025 is I'm going to swing dance every day for 30 minutes with my sons and Nancy when she joins in. And I wrote it here as I swing dance. I'm not going to do this. I'm saying I do this. It's kind of an affirmation way of saying your resolution. And the thing about this, and I wrote this on the slide, is my resolution is going to help me be fit enough to not just deliver these daily lives that I do, but I have all sorts of major projects. I'm literally going to start a business on the side, a government contracting business, just to show industry how it can be done and how I can do it from scratch again to get to $1 million in 12 months with a brand new idea, right? And so all these different initiatives I have, GovCon in a Box, it's this major rollout we're doing. I'm super excited about that, but it takes tons of extra energy. And so I want to have that energy for that. And then also basic health. But also I talked about dedicated fun time with my kids. It enables me to be able to have conversations. So it's a really good thing. And it'll also make everything easier and some things unnecessary going into 2025. For example, it'll make it easier if I just say, sticking with my kids for 1 second, it'll make it easier for me to have conversations with them or to engage with them on a regular basis. It potentially will make unnecessary the need for me to have to, have stern conversations about misbehavior or something, because every single day we're talking, and every single day I'm committed to just kind of mentoring them a little bit every day into the young men that we all hope kids grow up into. And so as we move forward, I set a goal that prioritizes for me my health and my relationship with my family. When you think about it, right, what's yours? And I don't want to take too much time on here, but I do want to come back and see, Kimberly, I've been thinking about that because I am not a shy guy and I love dancing. But what's your resolution? What's your 2025 New Year's resolution? I'd love to see that. And let me just wrap up with a couple of reminders on what I want you to take away from today's training. The first thing is identify those big rocks for 2025. Just take a few minutes and just write down, hey, what are the big things that are really important to me? Some ways of doing that is just thinking about what are the roles you have, a professional, a friend, a family member, et cetera. What are those roles you have in your life? And then you can see big rocks kind of take shape. Pick one of those big rocks and say, which one of them, if I worked on it, that one big thing would make everything else easier. That's the biggest thing for me, is if I did this, it would make everything else easier. And then set a smart resolution around that so that you can achieve it and you can feel good about it every single day. Hey, as we wrap up, I did want to tell you about something new that I'm doing. I've talked about it multiple times throughout today, but I'm just telling you, I'm starting a company called Nancy Co. And its whole purpose is to just show people that government contracting is not a secret. It's a process, and it's a process I will follow to start another company and grow it to $1 million in 12 months. So if you'd like to participate in that journey, go check out govconchamber.com/NancyCo starting tomorrow. I haven't put anything up there yet, so don't go to that URL, but track that URL because that's where I'll put, I'm just going to journal the journey as we go forward. So hopefully this was good for you. I'm super excited you were able to join. I'm really happy about the people in the 100 Club. I'm going to hold off till Monday to start celebrating it again. So we've got a lot more people who hear about your company hitting that. Happy New Year to everybody. I will see you in tomorrow's training if you're there. Have an awesome day. And don't forget that government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Have a great day.